Hello and welcome to the Ross Cloud Podcast. I'm your host, Car.Ross Sr. And this platform was created to motivate and to inspire in hopes that you will become a better you. Before I get started, I always love to give a shout out to all of those that are listening all over the world. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Ross Cloud Podcast. I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. And so, of course, to my home state of North Carolina, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I'm originally from, to Greensboro, the Gate City. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you so much. Charlotte, Raleigh, North Carolina, Boardman. Oh, Boardman, love you guys down there. You guys are just tuning in and listening. And, man, it does my heart well. It does my heart very, very good that you guys are tuning in and listening to the Ross Cloud Podcast over in Brussels, Belgium. Thank you guys so much. You guys are representing to the fullest over there, especially to my French-speaking folks over there in Brussels. Bonjour. And to those that speak Dutch and Flemish, hello. Thank you guys for listening. And listen, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. We have a very special guest in the building with us on today. We have Miss Beth C. Kincaid, who is a psychotherapist, and she is going to talk to us today about the field that she works in and take us on a little journey. And I think this is really going to be a great show, in my opinion. And hopefully you guys can get something from this conversation that can just, you can see a glimmer of hope in your life. So listen, I'm not going to hold you up. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. Hello, Beth. How are you?
Good.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, it's good to see you too. I'm especially very excited about this interview because sometimes when you first come into a building, you get a chance to see everybody. You don't get a chance to really speak to everybody like you would like to because everything is business as usual.
That's true.
Yeah, got to get in, got to get out. Nothing personal, but that's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You say hello and you keep moving. So this interview is so very, very vital and important to me on a personal level. So thank you for joining the Ross Cloud Podcast. Really do appreciate it. So listen, I was looking at your resume, and it is extensive, very impressive resume. And 38 years experience in the field. And I'm sure you have seen it.
Means I'm old.
You're getting better, though.
True.
But 38 years with such an impressive resume that you have, it's very impressive. I had a chance to actually read it, and it's amazing. So you started out, you were born in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So if you would kind of take the folks on a journey on how you ended up here in Greensboro, your education, and then we'll just get into the conversation.
So my father was in med school in Philadelphia. That's why myself and my two sisters were born there.
Okay.
And once he finished doing his residency, he had to go into the Navy and do his duty to the Navy at that point.
Yes.
Men were actually required to do a certain number of years. And so we stayed in San Francisco for a couple of years during my preschool years, and I went to a French bilingual school there, so that was kind of interesting.
Wow.
And learned how to read and write in French before I learned how to read and write in English.
I love it. I would have never known that.
Yeah.
That's just absolutely. So you speak it fluently.
I used to.
I got
haven't
you.
used it in so long.
I got you.
I was raised in New Orleans. That's where my parents' families were.
Yeah.
And they speak a lot of French down there, the
Sure.
Cajun people, and there's just a lot of French history. And so that's one reason why it's important, or it was important for me to know some of that.
Sure.
But I didn't really get the education in the school I went to until about third grade again, so I kind of lost some of those things.
I understand. I totally understand. Are you a big fan of beignets and crawfish?
Oh, I love beignets. Yes. don't so much like crawfish, but
Okay.
I actually grew up there and didn't have one until 12th grade.
Really?
So that's kind of an interesting fact.
Yeah.
But shrimp and crab and lobster I could eat all day long.
I know it. Great place for music and food.
Absolutely.
It really is. I had the opportunity and pleasure of going to New Orleans. And I tell you, we were on Canal Street, and it's a party everywhere, I tell you.
Yes. And it doesn't start till about 11.
Yes,
so
yes.
All night long.
That's right. And so you ended up here in Greensboro after that.
So down there, they don't really have seasons.
Okay.
The coldest it generally gets is about 50, and I was wearing a navy pea coat at 50 degrees. Here, I don't really wear much more than a sweater when it's freezing. So I really like the seasons, and so I moved up here to go to school. I chose to go to Guilford College, which is a smaller college, because I didn't want to just be a number. I wanted to be a part of a community that was closer knit. And I wanted to have the beaches and the mountains around and be able to experience all of that. Sure.
What was that experience like for you over at Guilford College?
It was actually, I realized I might have liked a bigger college because there was not as many activities as I was used to participating in.
Sure.
And so when I first came here, I would go out and about to the bank or the store, and it would be really frustrating because people would just sit and chat all day long. And I'm just in a hurry because I have things to do.
Absolutely.
To go.
Yeah.
So years later, I've really become more accustomed to just sitting and chatting. And not having to be in a rush as you would be in a big city.
Sure.
And I used to drive around in the country I had a big old Delta 88 convertible and I'd drive around and just enjoy the countryside and the trees. Which now a lot of that is gone, unfortunately, due to new subdivisions and things.
Sure. Great car, by the way.
It was a great car. Pile a bunch of people in there.
Absolutely, and hit the road.
That's right.
Yes, I absolutely love it. So when did you know that you wanted to go, that this was your choice, the career field that you chose? When did you know while you were in college?
When I was 13.
Really?
So I'll tell you that story. My father was a psychiatrist, and both of his parents were psychiatrists. And they had a private practice together in New Orleans in an old house. And so I used to work in the summertime answering the phones and filing and things in there. And back at that time, they didn't have answering services or real answering machines. So the clients would actually call our house. And so they actually got to know us answering the phone. And would ask about us and stuff like that.
Wow.
And one day I was at his office and answered the phone, and somebody was in crisis. Their wife was going to commit suicide or something. And I said, I'm really sorry, but he's not here. And his secretary's not here either. I'm just answering the phone. Well, I need you to help me. And I was 11 years old at the time. And I'm like, you really don't want me to help you.
Wow.
But somehow I got through that. And so just ever since then, I've known I love people, and it's just very fascinating to me to get to know people.
I get that, too, from your personality. You seem to be very quiet. I told my wife, I said, Beth is a sweet lady.
Oh, thank you.
You have such a kind aura about you. I'm big on energy, and you just have a peaceful way about you. But it's good because you're in the perfect field to do that. So here we are. We're in college, and what were your classes like when you first got into it? Did you have some challenges along the way? I'm sure you have, because we have challenges.
I double majored in sociology and psychology, and what I found, interestingly enough, was that sociology, although the topics sound real interesting, it's boring.
I got you.
But it's easy. Psychology is a lot harder and more interesting. Sure.
Well, that's good. So you got ready to graduate, and as I was reading your resume, you did some social work too. Which do you like better? Do you like social work?
I like the counseling better.
Do you really? So what's the difference between therapy and counseling, or the psychological part versus counseling? Is there a difference, or is it the same?
A lot of people that graduate and have masters in psychology or doctorates, they really do more testing or research. They don't do as much counseling.
Sure.
So that's kind of the difference there.
Okay.
Social workers do counseling, and so do nurses sometimes,
Sure.
nurse practitioners. And so there's kind of a wide variety of degrees that can do work in that field.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. So have you ever, I'm trying to remember when I was reading your resume, did you do, drug abuse counseling or anything like that?
I have done some of that.
Have you?
I don't have a certification in it. I took a primary certification, but I don't really, that's not my favorite
That's
thing
your favorite
to do.
thing. I got you.
So I do it occasionally, but
Sure.
it's just not my favorite.
I got you. What have you ever turned down someone from counseling, maybe for a fear or let's say this, the fear of unknown, or you wasn't quite sure, like, okay, if I say that, it may trigger? Or do you even worry about that at all,
I
Beth?
don't generally worry about it. The people that I tend to try to not jump into, anorexia is one of those.
Really?
Somebody who's a multiple substance abuser.
Sure.
Mainly because those people are very difficult to work with, mainly because they're not honest with themselves and they're not honest with you a lot. And so it tends to get complicated, and they need sometimes inpatient treatment. And
Sure. I got you. This is, listen, I hope you guys are learning something, but also listening to what she's saying and how she's saying it and the choice of words that she's using to help you guys just kind of navigate and get an understanding. And so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And Beth, what I would like to do is I would like to hear your perspective. You could take about 5-10 minutes if you like, as much as you would, just to kind of give your perspective on psychology today and what you think about it today, and where do you think it's going, and what do you think it should be? Where you think it should be on today, if you would. I know that's a broad answer, but I would like to just hear your perspective on it, if you would, in today's society, because we have so much going on in our world today, and I would just like to kind of just hear your perspective on it, as best as you can,
So there's several changes in the world of psychiatry. I think what's interesting is they have developed some blood testing that is able to tell doctors what type of medicines would be best to use with specific people. But back to the therapy part, you're exactly right. I think we've made some really big changes, starting maybe around the time of COVID. Yeah. But maybe even just before that, with political issues and climate change and the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter, the war, the Queen just died.
Yes.
Every time you turn around, there's something,
always something, some
kind of crisis going on. And
Absolutely.
So what that's created in people is a real fear of what's going to happen next. And I was thinking about that the other day. It almost feels like you're in a dysfunctional family and you have an alcoholic parent, and you just never know when they're going to come home happy or mad or what.
Love that
what
analogy.
The thing is going to be that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so I think COVID kind of made that even worse, because we had to stay at home and isolate from people, and we still periodically have to do that.
Yes, we do.
And so people are kind of on edge waiting for that next shoe to drop. And they don't know what they're going to have to be expected to do, and it feels like an emergency each time.
Yeah, it does.
So part of what people do is they try to anticipate that stress, and the longer it goes without something happening, the more stress they get.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we create a drama just to get that explosion over with so we can move on from it.
Yeah. That's a great perspective you got on that, because I remember going through those moments during COVID. And when you're a creative, it can be real hard on you. It can just be kind of difficult, because that's the very thing that you love.
Exactly.
And it's just what you said. It's almost like somebody just all of a sudden just said, you can't have this.
Right. You can't. Those are the coping skills that everybody had. When I'm stressed, let me go do this.
Yeah.
And you couldn't go do that.
Yeah. That's the thing that brought you peace.
Right. And so you start to feel trapped and stuck, and people would get depressed every so often, and then the next day it'd be okay, but the next day you're depressed.
Yeah.
And you can't reach out to the people you normally reach out to for reassurance and support because they're all going through their same thing.
Sure.
So some of the people that have done better coming out of that are the ones that have actually left the house and gone back into the world.
Yeah.
And the people that have stayed home have gotten a lot more hesitant or scared of the world in general.
Yes, I totally agree. I can definitely attest to that. A lot of my great aunts and my mother, they're very hesitant about where they go. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's not just one particular age group, or you see it across the board, though. So I can't just put it in one spot and say, well, the elderly are afraid.
It's
because
not in one spot.
It's not.
All over.
It's all over the place. And, as I was listening to my mom one day, she says, I'm going in the grocery store, but I wear my mask. So it's always, even though some of the COVID restrictions have come down,
right.
My mom is still, it's almost like a trigger, like, oh, I'm scared. I got to put this on. I don't want to get sick.
Well, and these things are invisible and they're not predictable. And so we just are sitting there waiting to be told, uh-oh, here we go again. It's an emergency, or you're dying all of a sudden.
Sure.
Sorry,
Yeah, if you would, could you tell the folks without giving them too much? Because Beth is a professional. And so we're not going to give you too much. We're going to give you enough, though, to kind of help you get over the hump a little bit. If you would, Beth, could you kind of tell the folks some coping skills that they could use, with everything that we see going on? We have gun violence happening. We have, like you just said, the thing, we have water disparities. We have a crisis with the water in Nevada, with the drought, also in Jackson, Mississippi. We have all of these different things happening in our world today. And if you would, could you give some folks maybe a couple of coping skills that they could use just to help them become better?
So there's a few different things that I like to share with people. One of them is when you're feeling overwhelmed, I think we tend to carry our baggage from the past with us, and it's exhausting to do that. And I think we don't let go of it because we're afraid we will forget what we learned growing up.
Yes.
And then we tend to look towards the future and get anxious worrying about what's going to happen, and we scare ourselves to prepare ourselves for the future.
That's true, yeah.
But we very rarely stay and live in the moment we're in, and just be where we're actually living. And so it's very overwhelming to look at that big picture. But if you can try to get yourself to be in the moment and just think about what you're doing right then, you can plan your day or your year or your week, but come back to that moment.
Yeah.
And try to objectively be there like a science experiment.
Yeah.
3- and 4-year-olds run around in the fields and play, and they really just don't care what's going to happen because they know it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And we don't do that. We're scaring ourselves all day long and preparing and worrying about what's going to come next.
Yeah.
But if we would just be and not try to anticipate what's getting ready to happen, that would be really helpful. So part of the problem is what we feel is not so much about what's happening. It's more about our interpretation or our perception of what's happening.
Good.
It's the story we tell ourselves about it in our head.
Yeah.
And there's a part of our brain that takes those thoughts literally as if they're true, and then it reacts as if they're true.
Wow.
So if you say to yourself, I can't do this, your brain says, we can't do this. And it's an emergency. We've got to get away because we can't handle this.
Yeah.
So it's really important to change those thoughts, if you can figure out what they are, to something that works better for you. And then you will feel better and you will react better. So just as an example, if you're trying to carry a tray full of glasses full of water and you're afraid to spill it, you might say to yourself, don't drop it, don't drop it, don't drop it. But you're going to be more likely to drop it if you say that because you're focusing on that word drop.
Yeah.
If you say hold it up, hold it up, hold it up, you'd be more likely to hold it up.
Yeah. I love that. I just love the analogy that you gave about the 3-year-old. I love the perspective that you put on just that whole mindset thing, just talking to yourself, but you can overthink a thing and then here you are, you dropped it. I love that perspective that you put in place there. And I think that's awesome. I never even thought about that. 3-year-olds, you're right. They run around. They don't have a care in the world and this and that, and I think that's just absolutely just amazing. And I love your perspective on that. And so as we continue to move forward, there is one particular question that I wanted to ask, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions, and then we'll end and tell the folks how they can get in contact with you so that they can use some of your services. Okay. So one thing that I wanted to ask is when it comes to molestation and trauma. Now, I'm not going to speak on it too much, but I myself have gone through that as a 9-year-old child, and I've already made peace with it, and I've already spoke about it before. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, when that happens to an individual, I'm better able to understand myself now because of the therapy that I've gone through. But the question that I wanted to ask you is, when a person goes through that, can that alter their behavior on how they approach certain things when it comes to sex, when it comes to relationship?
Absolutely. When
it comes to maybe you find yourself indulging in pornography a little deeper. It's many layers to it. But I wanted to ask you that from a psychological standpoint, when it comes to the mind, what type of impact does that have on a person as they move forward in their development as an adult? If you would, from your perspective and professional, could you kind of just give us some insight on that?
It's such an individual thing, so it's really kind of hard to just say it in one generalization.
Yeah, because you said that earlier. It's based off of the individual. I can't just say, okay, this works for you, because it may not work. I get it. Okay.
Well, and if you have isolated incidents that happen with somebody you don't know versus somebody you do know,
sure,
or people in your neighborhood where you're going to be confronted by these same people over and over, or at school, the same kind of thing, or is it your family members that are watching pornography and
sure,
you're exposed to inappropriate stuff every day, all day, and they kind of normalize that? It's very confusing, and pornography itself is confusing. And it kind of normalizes things that aren't, they're fantasy, they're not reality.
They're not reality.
Right.
Good
so
word.
It
good
confuses people. And so part of it, too, is there's a trust issue that happens with people that you think you can trust older people or you think you can trust your family, but not necessarily. So when you find out they choose to hurt you, then you start to not only not trust them, but you start to not trust yourself to know when you can trust somebody.
That's good.
It makes it even more confusing. So
absolutely.
People can become more promiscuous because they feel like that's what love is. Sometimes they can try to just disconnect, and pornography is a way to disconnect.
Sure.
And not have to be in a committed relationship.
Sure. Do you think that can be damaging as time goes by, though,
It
Beth?
depends on how much help you get or how you work through it in your own head.
Okay.
So part of, I think, what happens, too, is I really have decided that we're genetically disposed to be our own worst critic. And so we say critical things and judgmental things to ourselves in our head all the time.
Yeah.
And we talk to ourselves worse than we would talk to anybody else. So part of it is learning how to not do that and understand those words in your head are really damaging.
Yes.
And so you need, and you're the only one you can guarantee to be there for you until you die. So you need to learn how to be your own best friend.
Yes.
And support yourself.
Yes.
I also think we end up inevitably reparenting ourselves anyway because our parents don't know what we're thinking and they don't really know what we need, and they can't because they can't read our minds.
That's right.
And I think the way they're taught to parent, or we're taught to parent, is to do that by telling kids what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And so even if you are writing a perfect paper and you get 100 and they say, oh, that's great, but you forgot to put a period here. The message you get is, I'm never enough. So then people try to strive to be the best they can be, to be good enough.
Sure.
And that's a sabotaging thing to do because you're never perfect. You're never going to be enough. When you're enough, you're dead.
Sure.
You know? And so I'm trying to teach people not to get the enough thing out of your goal set, because you're not going to ever get there.
Yeah,
you are enough. Enough is what you are today, which might be different from what you are tomorrow.
Sure. Thank you.
It's more about self-acceptance and being positive with yourself. Those words in your head to your brain are very important.
Yes, I love it. Great answer, Beth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So listen, I have a few questions that was one of my questions, but I have one here. Is there a such thing as ESP?
That's a good question.
And so for those folks that don't know what that is extrasensory perception.
Extrasensory perception.
Thank you. Extrasensory perception. Thank you for correcting me. I love it. ESP.
So it happened to be a topic I used to be really interested in a long time ago growing up, just because I think it's interesting. But, you know, they've done a lot of research on that. Some people tend to be supposedly more open in their head to that and better able to do that.
Yeah.
I have actually personally found that when you're at your lowest energy self, you know, if you're in college and you're going through a whole bunch of things emotionally, that's when you're probably more sensitive to being able to connect or read other people.
Yeah.
So one day when I was in college, my roommate came in, or my friend came in and said, I can't find my notebook. And all of a sudden I had a flash of a picture of her notebook on top of the Coke machine downstairs. I said, go look downstairs on the Coke machine and see if it's down there.
I got you.
And it was. So I think, not that I can ever always read her mind in particular, or anybody's, but I think sometimes you can pick up on other people's, definitely their energy, their emotions, and sometimes their thoughts.
Yes.
So if you're connected really well with like your spouse or somebody else, you kind of know what they're about to say a lot of times.
Yeah.
But you do need to be kind of sensitive to not expect that you know everything, because you don't.
Ain't that the truth?
And so a lot of times we'll assume we know what somebody's going to do or what they're thinking, and then that gets us in trouble, because we aren't just preparing our response to that, and we're not really listening to the person.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would say that I've heard people say I had a deja vu moment. And as you were speaking about that, I was like, wow, I guess we all have had those moments. Like, oh, wait a minute, did I just see that?
I have a funny thought about that as well.
Okay, yeah.
So deja vu is supposed to be like you're experiencing something you've experienced before.
Yeah.
But my thought is maybe we had that thought in our head before and we're really just experiencing it for the first time.
Understood.
So it was our premonition about something.
I love it. Which is a great segue. Why do we dream?
Okay. So
is that part of that deja vu thing?
Maybe.
Okay.
So our dreams really are, I think, our brain's way of processing our day and our life and kind of where we are and what's bothering us.
Yeah.
And it helps us to work through those things and put it away.
Yeah.
So if you don't dream, it can really mess with your brain and your thought processes and make you feel crazy. If you don't get sleep, then you will start to hallucinate and do all kinds of things. So sleep and that REM sleep is really important. Yeah. We do dream supposedly every night. Not everybody remembers it because I think you have to wake up right at the tail end or in the middle of your dream to actually remember it.
Yes.
And then a lot of times it just quickly dissipates and you don't remember it.
Yeah, that's the truth. I've had dreams where I felt like I was falling.
Yeah.
You wake up in a deep sweat, or you're running from someone, or I guess all of that is just something like you just said a few minutes ago. Maybe you had a thought of that, and it triggered that dream.
What I find to be really interesting is it's not so much to me about the symbolism, which I've also studied. It can be, but I think it's your own symbolism. It's not necessarily Jung decided this was the right symbol.
Yeah.
But what I find really fascinating is if somebody describes the dream out loud to you, they end up telling you what the dream is about.
Yeah.
So, I was stuck here and somebody's chasing me and it was so overwhelming. I'm like, well, so you feel stuck in your job and your boss has been harassing you.
Right.
And it's overwhelming.
Sure.
So
Oh,
that
man.
would fit.
Okay, so number 3, how can we motivate ourselves more effectively through reinforcement? And you might have answered it a few minutes ago, but if you would, could you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think giving ourselves grace as well as that the positives in your head are really important. But also to really try to work on not judging and not judging other people and just trying to just be and try to accept as much as you can.
Yes.
So when you tell somebody, this is how I feel, you want to be able to say, when this happens, this is what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do necessarily with what you're doing, but it's the way I experience it.
Yes.
And this is what I might need to change so that it feels better to me.
Sure.
So if we talk to each other that way and talk to ourselves that way, then you don't feel so constantly beat up and harassed. I feel like we expect ourselves to pop up and be super people, but we beat ourselves up all day long, and that's really not going to work.
No, it's not going to work at all. I think you have done an excellent job, Beth, of answering this question. And so in closing, if you would answer this last question, what's the key to solving life's problem? In your opinion, your perspective, as well as professional.
In a nutshell, take it one step at a time, because that's all we can do. We can't fix everything.
Yeah.
And we don't know what life's problems are going to be or when they're going to pop up. So, and we don't have the energy to do it all at once.
Yes.
What I've found is a lot of us try to be super people, but super person inevitably crashes and burns. So
Yes.
Again, keeping an open mind and not trying to carry everything and trying to have yourself have reasonable expectations.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Listen, I hope you guys have heard something on today that can help you become a better you. But before we close, if you would, Beth, could you tell the folks how they can get in contact with you for your services? I don't know if you do Facebook. I don't know if you do Instagram. If you could tell the folks how they can get in contact with you and possibly follow you.
I'm not on Facebook and Instagram professionally, but my business number is 336-450-0606. The best way to make an appointment with me is to go to my client portal, which is the address is my name, Beth C. Kincaid, Kincaid .clientsecure.me. And once you're there, you can sign in as a new client and create an account for yourself and see what appointments are available. I am in the Psychology Today listings, so you can see my bio there too.
Awesome. Listen, this is the Ross Cloud Podcast. Make it a great day and keep being great. Peace.